you look at Tesla, 297 right now. I'm not worried about it long term. Average volume, 115 million. Today's low, 291. 52-week low, 167. And their PE ratio is still really high, 156. But long term, regardless of, this EV tax credit, bullish. He forecasted 250,000 Cybertrucks. They only sold 40,000 in 2024. He predicted cutting $1 trillion from the deficit. They've only cut billions. It's still something, and he's still trying things. And you can always criticize the first move. You can always criticize the consequential decision maker. And so it's just crazy how much flack he's gotten for the Doge initiative, which people should be on board with. And the way the media framed it as these young kids with programming skills able to make things more efficient as a bad thing was just baffling. And I think we'll look back and realize that, you can hate Elon, you can hate Trump, you can hate the people. But what the gist behind it basically is we're paying more in interest than we're paying for our national defense. And so that subtracts from potential outlays to other useful things like Social Security. So now on howdystranger.net, I have a economic indicators dashboard, and the latest job numbers have come in. So I have some subcategories, employment indicators. So we were talking about the non-farm payrolls. This is number of jobs added. March and April were revised down. March, 120,000. April, 147,000. May, the latest, 139,000. Jobs added. Unemployment steady at 4.2, but less people looking for jobs. So that number should go up because people are not actually looking. Let's qualify those additional jobs added, 139,000. Looking down by sector, education and health plus 87,000. Leisure and hospitality plus 48,000. Construction 4,000. Business services down 18,000. So very concentrated, these additional 139,000 jobs. And then ADP, this is national employment jobs created for April, 62,000. May, 37,000, 40% decrease. So that's the concerning number, just because people aren't hiring and people aren't firing. Okay, let's look at the futures prediction markets. This is Fed decision in June, no change, 97 cents, cut of 25 basis points, 3 cents, and cut over 25 basis points, 1 cent. So this is Jerome Powell basically holding steady, realizing immigration has affected the ADP and the BLS surveys. So if you look at household versus establishment, household is table A from BLS or DOL, and this is the household survey on unemployment, and establishment is the payrolls. And so holding steady. Did I say 97 or 98? Maybe that just changed. So even more certainty there potentially. Inflation in May, prediction markets above 2.1, 96 cents, above 2.2, 93 cents, and predictions above 2.3, 76 cents. So likely that the inflation stays steady around that 2.1 prediction. Doge was granted access to SSA. This was against the injunction from U.S. District Judge Ellen Hollander from Maryland. And if you go to howdystranger.net, I have an analysis of one of the Supreme Court cases regarding birthright citizenship. And what it came down to was basically the universal injunctions and whether a district judge can hold the president from enacting a universal or national policy. And so this is a good example here with SSA. Again, back to Doge, we shouldn't be concerned about their access to these systems. I mean, these are young nerds with technical skills. And so if we can revamp systems, that's the excellent choice. And then whether we do good things with that is a policy decision. And hopefully we can retain the checks and balances. Obviously, Congress controls the purse. Commerce Department updated access rules for this $42.5 billion internet access fund, and this will make it easier for satellite internet providers to tap into these funds. The Trump administration had frozen these funds earlier in the year, but under the new requirements, they're not going to get their funds for another 6 months. Okay, this segment is where we're investing money. I want to mention this app called Autopilot, and it basically ties in with an API to your brokerage, and Robinhood participates, Public participates, and I think it's Webull or eToro is the other brokerage. So it ties into your brokerage, and then it allocates an amount of money, and it buys and sells according to these public disclosures in the form of a 13F that has to be filed with the SEC. And so these pilots or funds will use your brokerage to buy and sell. When they report, they buy and sell. So obviously there's a delay, but the performance is listed. So one of these pilots is called the World War III portfolio. It's get an 89% return all time. And for the last week, it's 2.1%. But I'm really not advocating for buying weapons here, but investing in, drones. When you look at what happened with Ukraine and this attack on Russia, realizing that these drones are the next frontier. And so I think even the FAA has developed new rules to speed up the development of drones. And I think DJI, this is a China company, they're 70 to 90% of the drone market in the U.S. When you're looking to invest in this trend, this World War III portfolio on autopilot, just look at their current holdings, 22% in Rocket Lab, their space company, launch services. The next one at 9% is Crowdsource. KTOS, this is Kratos Defense and Security Solutions, leading defense contractor. RTX, this was renamed, but this is Raytheon. AVAV, AeroVironment, specializes in the design and production of unmanned aircraft systems. Maybe those are our drones. So take a look at AVAX, even like the Inverse Kramer Autopilot, all-time 101% return, baby. Look at that. Pelosi tracker, this is for, 163%. Autopilot. Assets under management, $413 million. Average delay, 2 weeks. Risk level high. Okay, so you tie that in to your brokerage API, and it buys and sells. You obviously pay a management fee. But her top current holdings, I maybe shouldn't say her. I think it's more her husband. Heralded as the queen of politician stock trading, she made a name for herself by profiting in tech stocks that happened to benefit from legislation, specializes in making notable eyebrow-raising trades. Current holdings, Nvidia 20%, Google 13%, Palo Alto Networks, I believe these are cloud, firewalls, threat intelligence, security tools, cyber breaches, CrowdStrike type. And I think actually that Pelosi, she had a bunch in CrowdStrike, and that doesn't seem to be a top holding anymore. 6%. One I'm interested in is Tempest AI Incorporated. This is in the Pelosi Auto Trader at 9%. Tempest AI Incorporated is a technology company that uses artificial intelligence and data analytics to advance precision medicine, particularly in the field of healthcare and oncology. Founded in 2015 by entrepreneur Eric Lefkowski. The company is headquartered in Chicago. Tempest AI, take a look. That's one thing I'm looking at is AI. And so my new holdings, and you can check out this on howdystranger.net. Harold Terrence, 101-year-old U.S. veteran, married to his 96-year-old sweetheart. Let's take it from him. He thinks war is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Another executive order for the FAA to resume development of the supersonic flight over land. And this company, Boom Supersonic, started by Blake Scholl, Amazon executive. And he's trying to revive this Overture plane, 25 passengers going 750 miles an hour, Mach 1. This is when the boom happens, and hence the name of his company, and they figured a way to curtail that sonic boom. And I also think where they used to use wind tunnels for iteration, now with these Honeywell chips from Nvidia, they can simulate and streamline design. And so I just feel like any kind of innovation around aviation, it's been tied up between these two behemoths in Boeing and Airbus. There is maybe not a market for these, where, British Airways and Air France were the only takers back in the day, with I think only 14 Concords flying commercially. And so the glitz faded. And then there was an accident, and then 9/11 happened, and the market just hasn't been there. Boom needed to raise, I think, $6 to $8 billion to get Overture into production, and now they're raising $1 to $2 billion. And so the naysayers are Delta, and the pro-sayers are United, OpenAI, and former Boeing CEO Phil Condit sits on Boom's board. So there's talk about these minerals from China being hard to get now, and that we need to find them on the seabed. And I think Trump enabled exploration of the seabed for these minerals. So these rare earths are restricted, but recently China allowed for some American companies to receive licenses to export these magnets. So there's a group of 17 elements. These are found near the bottom of the periodic table, and these are they're rare earth metals. But the big application are these magnets that are heat resistant. But the other thing that comes to mind down there, deep in the ocean, is fresh water. This is crazy, right? I was reading this book, I think it was called The River Jordan, and it was a little story of how Israel was so successful creating clean water. The big criticism of desalination is the cost. But with electricity being cheaper, this becomes less of an issue. And so it used to be really energy intensive. This was before 2000, when they discovered reverse osmosis. And reverse osmosis is it's the process of taking water and putting it through these tiny plastic membranes with holes, just so that water molecules can flow through, and then it just leaves behind the brine. And so you would usually pump this up, and it was energy intensive to pump it. And so the energy in Trinidad in 2002, they got a plant that produces 40 million gallons a day. In Israel in 2005, they produce 85 million gallons a day. And so you can just see this exponential increase in efficiency and reduction in cost. So still pretty expensive, $2 to $6 per 1,000 gallons. But these three companies, Rise and Ocean Well, is Bay Area based. But the principle is basically you go down and use the ocean's natural pressure and gravity, and you do the process down in the ocean where the water is pure, less fish poop, less debris. And then you pump up that fresh water after it's been desalinated at the bottom of the ocean. And so it uses less electricity. But then even if electricity becomes cheaper, everything is being optimized with AI. You just plug in these models, and then you do these little energy efficiency measures along the supply chain, and eventually it's got to come down. So Rise announced this deal to provide 6.6 million gallons of water a day. Let's look at the yield on the 10-year. If you go to my economic indicators dashboard, down to interest rates, we have the 30-year fixed mortgage rate, which is at 6.85%. And then below that is Treasury 10-year yield, up from 4.42 in May to 4.51. Okay, let's go to the housing market. If we zoom out to the conditions for buying, and this is a sentiment survey, we haven't seen these conditions since 84, and it's only been lower two times since 1960, 1974, and 1981. Okay, and let's look at Case-Shiller. This is your U.S. home price. It's never been higher. I mean, the chart is just off the table. And this is inflation-adjusted CPI home price index. We're at 297. Okay, historically been under 160. This is the index. Let's look to our charts at howdystranger.net. You can find this under the read section. We're looking at our housing market. Buyers can't buy because rates are high, and sellers can't sell because their rates are low, right? They're sitting on these mortgages sub 4%, no incentive to sell when you're going to have to assume a new mortgage at double the percentage. So one of these companies, Rome, is working on assumable mortgages, which I guess addresses the problem, but for some reason hasn't taken off, or I haven't heard much more about this company.